Episode 208 of Futures Radio Show, sponsored by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world effectively manage risk. For access to free educational tools and resources for the active individual trader, please visit activetrader.cmegroup.com.
Every day, traders and investors dive in to tackle the ever-changing markets to find opportunity. Futures Radio Show is your number one source for answers to the questions that all market participants want to ask. Veteran futures trader Anthony Crudele sits down with the most influential leaders and top traders in the industry. Now, here's your host, Anthony Crudele.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in for this episode with Mandi Rafsendjani. Remember, new shows are posted every Monday and Thursday. You can subscribe to our show on iTunes and YouTube. If you are enjoying the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. Now, before I play today's interview for you, I want to give a shout out to the great sponsors of Futures Radio Show: CME Group, Trading Technologies, RJO Futures, and Top Step Trader. To learn more about these sponsors and the important things they are doing for futures traders, be sure to click on their logos on our website. In today's podcast, I had the magnificent pleasure of speaking with Mandi Rafsendjani. She is an independent trader and coach. We kicked off today's conversation with Mandi sharing with us her backstory on how she got involved in trading. We then discussed the fine line between successful and unsuccessful traders. Mandi tells us how she thinks a trader should go about picking their strategy, and she shares with us her 3 pillars: trading mindset, trading statistics and metrics, and behavioral finance. We ended the chat today with Mandi's insight on the pathway to full-time trading. As usual, thank you all for listening, and please enjoy this episode. Mandi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony. It's so nice to meet you. I've been looking forward to it a lot.
I've been looking forward to this as well. Been following your work on Twitter for some time, watched some of your YouTube videos, and I really enjoy what I heard from you, especially about the psychology of trading. You talk about trader development, and something I think is very important that we're going to discuss today is the pathway to full-time trading. And I think that many new traders, they really don't have direction when it comes to what it's going to take to become a full-time trader. I don't think they really understood when they first started the amount of work and time it takes to be able to actually do this full-time. So we're going to discuss all of that today. But first off, I'm interested in your path and your backstory. So Mandi, can you talk to us and tell us how you got your start in trading and take us through your journey a bit?
Okay, so I used to live in Hong Kong, and then I moved to Australia for love. And I wasn't allowed to work for the first year. And so I started looking for, how can I entertain myself? And went to a seminar that was called A Night of Success. And that was my introduction to the wealth creation, into the wonderful world of wealth creation. I've never heard of it before. And as part of that, a few months later, I went to a seminar that was called Wealth Accelerator Seminar. And this guy was running a 3-day training. Then he offered investments, and people invested with him. And thank God I didn't invest much, just $5,000. And he ran off with all the money to America. And it was a lot of money that he collected, promising to invest it for people. So the guys who organized this event, they said, sorry, we can't get you your money back, but you can choose any seminar and attend it for free. And the only seminar available was an options trading seminar, and I think it was in the year 2000. And so I never thought that I can be a trader because I didn't think I have a numbers brain and so on. So I went to this options seminar, and after 3 days I was hooked. I was like, that is it. I will be financially free. I will be a multimillionaire by the end of the year. I will have my Ferrari in the garage. And you and I both know trading does not work like that. So this is how I got to trading. That's how I got hooked.
Talk about turning a negative into a positive. You get ripped off, but you say, you know what? It is what it is. You accepted it and went and took a course and started to learn options, and then gave yourself the opportunity and the belief that you could do this. That's a very interesting backstory.
Yes. And everybody said to me, you have to be careful because the biggest challenge is that people are not disciplined in trading. And I said, come on, I'm German. We Germans invented discipline.
Oh,
Didn't
wow.
save me either.
So, where do I even begin with this today? And, I want to talk about the fine line between successful and unsuccessful traders. I mean, I believe that there's a fine line between successful and unsuccessful traders because I go back to my experience. I kept feeling like I was ready to be able to start becoming successful and making money. And it took a lot longer than I anticipated. It took a lot more work than I anticipated. So I know that there was that fine line, and I always thought it was going to be a chart or some sort of analysis that was going to help me cross that line, and it wasn't. It was about just being in the right mindset to be able to start, I think, actually executing my strategy. I felt was something I wasn't focused on prior. It was more about the analysis I felt. So I realized there was just this whole package of process and mindset that was important. So profiling hundreds of traders like you have, what do you think is the fine line between a trader who becomes successful? There's many forms of the traders becoming successful, but versus a trader who ends up not making money and actually ends up quitting the business?
Yeah, so we have to distinguish between institutional traders who started on the floor, started in a bank, and the retail traders. So let me talk about retail traders because that's a kind of a different environment than institutional traders. I'm happy to talk about institutional traders later as well if you want to. So generally speaking, if you look at a human being, I don't know if you've heard the story from Tony Robbins where he talks about two brothers. One brother, super successful, creates $1 billion business. The other brother, alcohol addicted, drug addicted, in the gutter. And then he asked each brother, how did you get to where you are today? And then both brothers said the same thing. How could I have been ending up any different with an alcoholic, abusive father? So out of the story, that's a really big indication of why we have so many traders who are not successful and then the other traders who are successful. It goes back to how we process information, what our thinking patterns are, and what decisions we make on the back of what happens to us. And I was just talking to a trader last night who had horrific upbringing as well, and he was very disempowered. And then one day he woke up and he's like, "No, let's stop!" He drew the line in the sand, and he changed his life around. So if we look at before people get to the point of changing their life around, we have if you look at family dynamics, right? We have usually children who are we call them underperforming or underfunctioning or underactive. And then the opposite, which are overperforming, overfunctioning, overactive. The overfunctioning, overperforming ones we call the heroes. And they have many other roles as well, just to keep it simple. And then the underperforming, underfunctionings are usually the black sheep, the rescuer. So the more emotional ones compared to the more cognitive ones, the ones who are addicted to thinking, the ones who are addicted to feeling. The thinking ones, they usually don't have much access to their emotions. So they usually don't make the best husbands, but they make amazing traders. And then when they get to their mid-30s, beginning of 40s, that's when they come and see me because they realize that their relationship's going to fall apart, they're going to lose the kids, and then that's when we can do really good work, helping them to go to the middle. The underperformers, the functioning ones, they are so emotionally hurt that they don't have access to useful thinking patterns. They almost have no access to cognitive thinking. And what I do with those guys is I heal their pain first, their shame, their guilt, whatever happened as a child. So the guy who ended up in the gutter most probably had so much shame and guilt around his upbringing that they're trying to suppress that. And trying to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol, right? And I see that there are a lot happening in trading, Anthony, that there's a lot of self-medication going on as well with trading. So those guys, we heal the pain, And then I teach them thinking strategies, thinking pattern, how to think. There's an amazing article from Shane, what's it called again? FX, Parnham Street, what is it? Do you know whom I mean?
I'm not sure.
Okay, never mind. It will come to me in a minute. So he has this really great article about 15 thinking patterns. So most traders who are underperforming, they are so in their emotions that they haven't learned how to think in a way that helps them to make really good decisions. And that is, in a nutshell, the big difference between traders who succeed and traders who don't succeed. And that's why I say anyone can succeed. You just need to learn about what quadrant we fit in. So most of the time, those guys are in extremes. So we have an extremely underperforming codependent trader. They're in their relationships often codependent. They worry about what other people think of them. And then the other extreme is the narcissistic scale, where they're extremely cognitive, no access to their emotions, and they don't care at all about what others think. The health is in the middle, where they have access to their emotions, but also to the thinking patterns.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about my experience, like I said at the beginning, I said I always felt that it was going to be a chart or some sort of analysis that was going to push me or help me cross that line. And that was the furthest thing from the truth, because I felt that I was really good at reading patterns and really good at just seeing flow in the market. But my execution was terrible. And it really goes back to me not having the right mindset going into it. And so I completely agree with you that it is really, that is the fine line, because anybody can learn how to read a chart. Anybody can learn how to do fundamental analysis. But in order to be able to execute that analysis takes a specific mindset. And it really is, it's about learning about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And then, building a strategy around your personality. I believe pretty strongly about that, because you can't be something that you're not. So how do you think a trader should be choosing a strategy? Is it based off of their personality, or how do you think they should go about that?
All right. So how would a trader start? So let's look at what causes trading problems. And in a nutshell, the ones who are underperforming, they usually show in most areas of their life a lack of responsibility, a lack of emotional maturity. They have childlike magical thinking, so they very much think like children still, and they have this degree of dysfunction. And what happened was that in their development, there was an event where they experienced enormous shame or enormous guilt. And looking at family dynamics, family history, this is usually when the personal development stops. So often, we talk to 60-year-old people, but they're actually still like a 7-year-old child, because that was the moment when their development stopped. And this is why not many are a big fan of my work, because that's where I go. I clean up the problems, the challenges at the root cause. I don't work on the surface level, because I don't believe that's helping anyone. So where do they start? They start, I would suggest there is several frameworks that you can start looking at. Number one, you do an analysis of your own personality. So I have developed a system that I called Trader Dynamics. And what I do is I look at their DISC profile, so DISC. And based on their profile, I can pretty much see what their weaknesses and what their strengths are really, really quickly. And then if their weakness is, for example, that they're a low C tells me that they hate structure, they hate routine, they have a high need for freedom, and then I teach them how to implement structure and routine in their life and to love it and to be totally, become a structure and routine monster. They're the guys who usually don't like keeping their statistics as well, and metrics is so important, right, to improve. So I teach them how to love keeping their statistics. Then once we know what the disc profile is and we know what where the weaknesses lay, then we say, all right, so now all we have to do is we have to teach you that bit that you don't have, that weakness. Because why is it that you have a weakness there? So if you look at traders who are extremely mathematical, a friend of mine, he's so mathematical, he's a coder, he looks at the chart and he doesn't get what I see in a chart. And it's the other way around. You show me a chart, I see so much in it, the chart talks to me. And you give me the mathematical equations and my brain goes blank. The only reason is because I didn't practice, I didn't learn mathematical equations, but I learned and practiced visually processing information. So if you want to be an options trader, you have to be very mathematical. Number one, you find out what is your weakness and what's your strength. If you're extremely mathematical, go trade options. If you're extremely visual, look at technical analysis, for example. If you believe that options can be extremely useful for your trading as an additional tool, then you just train yourself in training your brain in how to process mathematical equations. That is one of my weaknesses. So what do I do when I go for a walk? I train my brain all the time. I see car license plate numbers and I add, 3 times 147. I practice it in my brain. And I also have friends who are hedge fund guys and they're fantastic with mathematics. It's, it's mind blowing. And I ask them a lot, right? So they help me with understanding those mathematical equations that I need in order to become a better trader. So number one, as I said, understand what your strengths and weaknesses are by doing those assessments. Number two, you can look at the 4 dimensions of making everything in your life successful. So it's like a pie chart, right? So the first piece of the pie is what we call the trading mindset. In a company, you would call it company culture. Why do we start with trading mindset, with company culture? Because your belief system, your value system, your experiences in life, your fears, your standards in life, right? Do you have very high standards? And Anthony, I loved it about you when we started talking before we went live. You said, I have very high standards. I want to have this level of standard, and we adhere to that. And so this level of high standard is important to succeed in trading. This is all the trading mindset. Your vision, your mission, when you have that in place, that will be the driving force for everything else. If your values are family are more important than making money, when you're in a position that needs to be monitoring and you have to choose between spending Friday night with your family or monitoring your position because it's NFP night, you will choose your family. Out of guilt, out of whatever it is, right? And then you will stuff up your positions, your trades, you will lose money. And that's why your values in the business context are so important, are the driving force for everything that follows. Now, the second piece of the pie is what we call structure. Structure is nothing but an operations manual, nothing but creating your routines, your work instructions. What do you do if your computer crashes? Do you have a backup? What is your daily routine? What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? What's your first thought? I do a breathing exercise, for example, and then I listen to some motivational stuff, right? So just get the good stuff right into my brain. I look at other traders who are extremely successful, who are on the over-functioning side of the business, so they are more prone to be narcissistic. They don't need to do that, what I need to do, because I'm more on the under-functioning side, more prone to being codependent and feeling bad about myself and worrying about other people, which makes me an amazing coach, but it gives me challenges in trading. That's why for my trading, I have to keep this kind of work up, right? So work instructions, structures, write your strategy down. You don't know, I say that all the time, write your strategy down in a recipe style. Step 1, what do you do? Step 2, what do you do? Step 3, what do you do? All the time I say that. Then I get traders contacting me, and that's my first question. Do you have your strategy written down? No. Go back, write your strategy down, then come back to me. Yeah. So do you have performance statistics? Most don't have them, because when you're not toned and a bit chubby and out of shape, you don't want to look in the mirror, right? But when you're shaped and toned, you can't stop looking in the mirror. And so it's the same with your trading, with your trading results. When you're doing well, you can't stop at looking at your metrics. When you're not doing well, you avoid it like the plague. And usually traders who contact me, they're not doing so well, so they don't want to look at their statistics. So the third piece of the pie is what we call implementation. So using your operations manual and then applying what you have written down in your structure, in your routine. And for example, Linda Rushke, she is so strong on routine and structure. She says that is one of her defining factors of what made her so successful. Then we need to look at feedback. So I wrote down this instruction in my instruction manual. I applied it. It didn't work. Why didn't it work? So I do something that I love calling puppy training. So when my trader has their clear entry and exits, but they don't follow them, they have to write down how much more they lost because they didn't follow their strategy. Let's say they were supposed to get out at a $100 loss, but they get out at a $500 loss. They have to write down immediately $300 lost. So it's kind of like what you do with puppies when they poo, in the middle of your living room. You put their nose right into their poo and say, "Do not do that."
Yep.
And then one more. The fourth part of the pie is team. You need to have a great team to support you. And that's what I would do as a structure when I get started.
I want to talk about something that you talk about a lot, and it's your 3 pillars. And you say pillar 1's trading mindset, pillar 2 is trading statistics and metrics, and pillar 3 is behavioral finance. Let's dig into each one of these. Let's start with pillar 1 in trading mindset.
Mm-hmm. So if we now look at structures and frameworks again, everything I do, I look at in the context of structures and frameworks. That fits into the pie number 2, which was structures, right? So your work instructions, your ops manual. Trading mindset is everything around how we process the world. Do we immediately think something negative, or do we immediately think something that leads us towards a solution? That's results-focused, solution-focused, rather than thinking, oh my God, I'm doomed. I had this loss. I can't believe I'm such an idiot. What do I do that for? Will I ever make it? Or do we think, I had this loss. I'm such an idiot. What do I need to do differently now? How can I improve my trading next time? What is missing for me so that I can change that result next time? Is it something in the markets? Is it something in my strategy? Is it something in my behavior? So trading mindset is all about the level of your thinking, as I just explained, and also your values and your beliefs. So if you have a belief system that is underlying, of course, everything, it's our programming that came from childhood. If you have a belief system that people with money are mean people, then even though we want to be wealthy with all that we've got, we are so hungry for success, we will find a way to sabotage ourselves. So I saw a lot on Twitter, people saying, you should think in percentages or think in pips and think in ticks rather than thinking about money, because that will help you to be more disciplined. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that, because if you have to trick yourself into thinking something else, that shows me that you have problems, that you have limiting beliefs around money. So you need to work on your money mindset, because you might make the money in trading, then you tricked yourself, but those limiting beliefs, those fears, those value conflicts, they will show up in other areas of your life. Meaning you make maybe a lot of money in trading because you managed to trick yourself, and then you go through a divorce and you lose it all. Or you invested money into another business, buying commercial property, and that was, a really bad investment. Our unconscious has this uncanny way to sneak through and present us with what we need to learn in life.
I think that's so important, what you just said. I mean, people try to shy away from what's tough about this business instead of embracing it. Now, I've had multiple conversations on this show and many outside of the show and talking with other traders and how you really try to find a way to, like you said, fake your way into thinking certain things that aren't real. And then eventually you sabotage yourself instead of just facing it head on, accepting it, embracing it. Am I wrong for thinking that way?
I think that you thinking that way is absolutely correct. The challenge for many traders is they say, I understand it. I know what to do, but doing what I know, this is so hard. So I know I need to accept it. I know I need to find peace with losing trades, but it's so painful and I still try to avoid it, even though I know better. So from what I could see from your Twitter feed, Anthony, is you have a very, very strong family connection. And if you look at losing, right, why do losing trades hurt so much for some more than for others? It's because it's similar to the feeling of a rejection. It's, having been stood up as a teenager when we started going out and dating, being turned down, left for another. Rejection hurts because it's like a visceral reaction. And studies have shown that there's actually a kind of a physical pain connected with being rejected. So not everybody deals with rejection the same way, obviously, because the way you described it is a very functional, very healthy way of looking at it. Whereas most traders who don't get on top of their losing trades, they look at it in a dysfunctional way, in the it's so painful, I can't deal with it. Now, what is the difference? There is 3 differences usually that I discovered between those traders. They have a very strong family support, or if they don't have family, support of friends, trading buddies. They're really helping the trader to stay mentally sane. So I don't have family in Australia, obviously, so I created this team around me. That was pie number 4, right? Team, where when I have a bad trade and I feel so bad about myself, which I'm prone to do, I call my friend and I say, let's go for coffee or let's go for lunch. And they know not to ask me questions. That I need the distraction, that I need the interaction, and need to know that they still love me, even though, I stuffed up. And so that is number 1. The second one that I found, so that's family, right? I call it family, even though it's not always blood family. The second one is faith. And I don't mean spiritual faith. I mean having faith and self-trust that you have what it takes, that you will find a way no matter what, that nothing will stand in your way, that you will take the mountains and take the valleys, and whatever happens, whatever obstacle comes in your way, you will find a way. And so this is the faith, right? You're going to succeed. You're going to turn your passion into profits no matter what, even if you have to take detours. And so when we have that helps us to find a healthy sense of self-esteem. And this is the third area where traders, they're rather than codependent, they're independent. And independent traders, I'm not talking about narcissistic traders, I'm talking about independent, healthily, people who are healthily interacting with other people. So I call them independent. And they still feel the pain of rejection, but they can move on very, very quickly because, number 1, they know themselves so well. They have this high self-awareness. And number 2, they know they can stop and regroup because they have the support structures in place. And Anthony, the people who say, Anthony, I hear you. I know that I have to do that, but I don't know how to. They are the ones who usually don't have the support structures in place. And they're feeling lost, and that's why they can't follow that.
I think you're so right. I mean, I've met so many different people in this industry, and hearing you talk about this, I've seen this firsthand. And I always go back to my situation because it's the only thing I could truly relate to. And I kept searching for different things to solve problems. I was looking for different solutions to problems that I was having with my execution. And the whole time I didn't want to face a lot of it head on with the trading, with having the right mindset. And a lot of what you're saying is really resonating with me today. And something else I want to move on and talk about pillar 2 is trading statistics. This is something that I also didn't do right away at the beginning. And I had to have one of my mentors say, so how have you been doing over the last few months? And I'd just be like, oh, I'm losing or I'm winning. And he'd be like, okay, but talk to me about some of your stats. And I'd be like, well, I don't know what they are. And he'd be like, well, you start there. How about you start writing down what's working for you and what's not working for you? And I was always like, well, isn't the P&L and my statement the only thing that matters? He's like, yeah, but you can't go back and find out what your strengths and weaknesses are if you're not keeping a log of what you're doing, basically a journal. It went beyond statistics. So I started doing that, and that was really life-changing for me because then I was actually able to see what was working not only with my strategy, but the mindset I was in on those specific days. And, I've told people this before on the show and on Twitter that the best days that I've had in my career in trading were not the busiest days that the market had. It was just the days that I was in the right mindset. I recognized my strategy was working very well that day, and I just had very good execution. The market was, I would consider some of my best days just normal market days. But it was just that I was in the right trading mindset. I had done my homework with statistics, and then I went in and I executed it because of knowing that things were working really well and clicking at that moment, that I was there to then take advantage of it. So talk about trading statistics and metrics, why this is your pillar number 2.
So exactly what you said, it's the only way to find your weaknesses and your strengths. And at the moment, we have the Soccer World Cup. And if we only look, if the coach only looks at the team has won or has lost, how are they going to improve for the next time? So in sports, they keep so many statistics on the players, on how many times they ran and how many times they got the ball and everything, the nutrition, everything. So why do we traders think we don't have to do that? It's the avoidance, right? Because it's uncomfortable. We are confronted with the reality of who we are, not who we wish we were. Linda Rashke, she was here in Australia just a few weeks ago, and I was so lucky. I had the chance to sit down with her and have lots of conversations, really interesting conversations. And she had a really good idea. She said, how about try to plot your how well you have eaten, how tired you are, so how much sleep you had, how your mindset is, if you're in a good frame of mind or in a frame of mind where you feel impatient or angry. Plot that against your performance curve, right, the equity curve, and see how that impacts your trading performance. You will be astounded. And I never thought about that, and I thought it was a really great idea to do that. Have you ever done that, Anthony? Have you ever?
That's exactly what I was talking about. Is that me, it was about. That's how I started to put together my instincts versus rules. I could go on all day about this, but just to stay on topic, that is exactly what it came down to. Was what was I doing? That night before I was up late, or I was out drinking, or I was doing something to where the next day I was sluggish, and I learned that everything I was doing outside of trading had ended up impacting what I was doing while I was trading.
Yes, exactly. And so that's why I also keep what I call critical moments. So number one, traders come, they say, I do all these mistakes. And then I ask them to keep a critical moment spreadsheet and say, write down all the mistakes that you made. And it turns out that it's usually like 1 or 2 mistakes that they make that keep repeating over and over again. So they're 80% of the mistakes. And that's great news, right? So once they start writing that down, they can see, wow, I'm 80% there. I just need to eliminate those 20% of mistakes that I keep doing all the time. And they get a sense of, I can do that, and a sense of, being having hope and getting control over their trading, over their life, that because they kept the statistics. And then I say, now the next step is, you made this mistake. Now get a step back. What happened right before that? What did you think? What did you feel? What did you say to yourself? Did someone come and disturb you? Did something in your life upset you? So a friend of mine just had a little baby, right? Little babies, they tend to change your life tremendously. Did that impact your trading? A parent being sick, that impacts our trading. So go backwards. You had the result. You stuffed up. You didn't take your loss where it was supposed to be taken. What happened right before that? What did you think? Last time I took my loss, it turned around. I'm sure it's going to turn around again, so I didn't take my loss. Or, wow, now I'm in a deeper loss than I wanted it to be. I wait till it gets back to a lesser loss, and then I get out at the lesser loss. Never happens, right? So what did you feel before that? And so we walk backwards to the root cause of what was the sequence that led us to having this loss, rather than just staring at this loss and saying, I had this massive loss and I'm such a loser and what's wrong with me and I will never make it. My dreams are floating away from me. And this is why performance statistics is so important, because that helps us to move from emotion into cognitive thinking, into the brain. And that's another reason. And I really have to thank Steve Ward for that. I hated statistics, metrics, and he turned me into statistics and metrics monster with his book, High Performance Trading, by the way.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll have to check out that book. I want to move on and talk about pillar 3, behavioral finance. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So behavioral finance is, Anthony, I used to be a mortgage broker in my previous life. And I realized that, number one, finance is much more intimate for people than sex. They rather talk about their sex life than about their financial situation. And so there is so much emotion around money and so much pride around money. And what I then also found is that most people have not learned how to think in ways that are actually financially leading to financially prudent decisions. And this is what Daniel Kahneman's work is all about, his thinking fast and slow. And of course, I know Denise Schall, either, but I don't agree with everything that he wrote, of course, but most of it is just amazing, and this is where behavioral finance came from. So behavioral finance is nothing but training yourself to think in such a way that your thinking strategy, your sequence of thoughts leads you to the outcome that you want to achieve. One of his famous examples is when he asked people if they would go to another shop to save $5. And when they were buying a product of $25, they were happily saying, yes, I go down the road for 10 minutes and so I can save $5. When it was a $1,000 product, they say, now $5 is not worth it. I spent $1,000 anyway. So the mistaken thinking here is that we have to take the $5 savings in the context of the income, not in the context of the expense. To me, that was completely new. I was the kind of person who would go to the bottle shop. I would see a $50 bottle of wine reduced by half price and think I'd get a really good deal, when usually I would buy a $10 bottle of wine and not realizing that I now spent $15 more. That's how uneducated I was. So financial numeracy and literacy, this is what behavioral finance is really. And most of us are not trained in it. And it's not our parents' fault anymore. The moment we turn 18, we have to train ourselves. There's the internet. There's, as I said, thinking fast and slow. There's my trainings. So much work that can be done there. That's why it's important.
Yeah, excellent. I really love the work you've done with the 3 pillars of trading. Excellent. Let's talk about that pathway now to full-time trading. I think there's so many traders out there, definitely a lot more on the cusp of trying to become full-time than there are full-time, because let's face it, everybody that begins this business, once they start, that's all they want to do, because it's one of those things. It's like, once you begin doing this, you either love it or you hate it. Or if you hate it, you just quit. But if you really like it, your whole goal is to be able to do this full-time. So talk to us about what you believe are the key elements for a trader to become a full-time trader.
Okay, so once again, I look at it in the context of frameworks. So the first framework I look at is what I explained before, the pie, with mindset, structure, implementation, and create a really good support team around you. That work needs to be done. Number 2, look at how we progress as a trader. It's like children growing up. When we start out, we are like little babies, like toddlers. We can't think for ourselves. We need someone to hold our hand, to explain to us the big, wonderful world of trading. We have no clue. And we are dependent on people like, you and myself and other educators who show us the ropes and teach us the books that we can read. Then the second level is where we start growing up and we become teenagers, we become rebels, right? We are like, you're all useless. I find my own way. So this is typically when traders go and buy a trading system, and then they don't follow the rules. That's when they are in that rebel, in their teenage years, where they think they know better, even though they learn from a trader who has 30, 40 years experience. And then the next stage is where they then start becoming young adults, where they realize that it's really important to have high standards, to have structure, to follow rules, where they become more, a little bit smarter around how to live their life. So where they become more responsible, where they learn what responsibility or being responsible really means. And then after those 3 stages, that's when we become our own trader, our own person. We know who we are. We have been through all the trials and tribulations. It's like the hero's journey, right? You can overlay the hero's journey over it as well. And where we then we don't make a drama out of losing trades anymore. We know losing trades come, losing trades go. We are doing really well. We are not doing so well. We fall off our horse, or we do really well again for a period of time, where it just becomes normal and we deal with it as, the weather comes and the weather goes. So these are the 4 stages in development, and we need to be clear on where we are in each stage and how to progress to the next level. So that's the second framework that I use. Another framework that I use is really looking at the resources that you need, because the reality is, Anthony, that most traders don't have the financial resources to go full-time trading. I don't know about you, but here in Australia, we can trade a lot on leverage. So I would say you need at least a $50,000 account to trade safely and with peace of mind, where you can sustain losing streaks at 2% loss, maybe only, stop losses. Where you don't need to worry. You need to have a healthy savings account where you are covered for a year at least. You don't need to worry about paying your rent. Where you need to worry about unexpected expenses, where your car may break down, or we have really bad weather where people lose the roofs over their houses and they need to fix the roof, right? All this unexpected, on these unexpected things that happen in life as well. They need to be covered. So look at the resources that you need. Yeah, you need to you need to have a strategy that works. And again, I see that most traders fall down in the strategy because they don't know who they are. And so they go and they try out all the different markets and they learn all about the markets, not knowing who they are. And that goes back to the beginning of our conversation. Do a disc profile. They're for free on Tony Robbins, right? Then find out, are you more mathematical or are you more visual? Are you more emotional or more intellectual? When you know yourself so well, what your pitfalls are, then you can find the markets. If you are someone who makes decisions slowly, you don't want to go into scalping, right? Even though scalping seems to be very sexy for many people, many traders. But if you don't have the mindset for it and the natural behavioral preferences for it, it's not useful. A lot of the work that I also do is I look at traders and say, what do you love doing in your normal life already? What sports do you do? I was talking to a trader at breakfast with him. He loves skiing, right? Mogul skiing and mountain biking up and down the mountains. He is certainly suitable for short-term trading, for scalping, because that's the behavior that he already displays in his sports, the quick decision-making, the being alert and focused. So for me, I used to be a show jumper on a horse. Same thing, right? Show jumping, quick decisions, focused for a very short period of time, and then I lose focus immediately, right? Have a very short attention span. When you know yourself, now you can cut down your time to a journey to becoming a full-time trader. You can make it better, faster, and safer. So you know who you are. Now you start looking at the strategies that are naturally suitable for your way of processing information. You're mathematical, you use options. Are you a big picture person? If you're a big picture person, you don't want to do candlesticks. Candlesticks is detail. You want to look at big pictures like Elliott Wave, or a really good friend of mine, Tony Sycamore. He's an amazing Elliott Wave trader. I didn't know that they are allowed to trade Elliott Wave at Goldman Sachs, but that's what he did, before they had to close the office here in Sydney, unfortunately. But so if you're a detail person, don't look at harmonics. or GAN. Look at candlesticks. Yeah, so when you know that, then you can go into focusing. This is a big picture strategy. This is a detailed strategy. I study this first. Which markets? If you are, so for me, the way I found out that the DAX works best for me is by keeping my performance statistics. It wasn't that I chose the DAX. It was I looked at my statistics and I saw this is the market I perform best in, that I'm most consistent in. And also, I realized do not trade gold. I can't read gold for my life. I get tempted from time to time, and every time I stuff it up. I also try to trade long term, right? Because you read so many times the only successful traders are the ones who are long term in the market. I can't. I stuff it up, Anthony. My performance statistics tell me. So this is what I would do. Work on those two levels.
Mandi, just awesome stuff. I can't thank you enough for sharing this great insight with us, but we are not done yet. I have rapid fire questions next, so are you ready for those?
Ready.
All right, everyone, our rapid fire segment is sponsored by Trading Technologies. Access the global markets from virtually anywhere with TT. They are the world's fastest commercially available futures trading platform. And now you can trade cryptocurrency, spot, and derivative markets side by side. For more information, please visit tradingtechnologies.com. Mandi, first question. What trader has influenced your life the most and why?
That was a hedge fund guy. I call him a hedge fund guy. He's extremely private. He has a level of multidimensional thinking that I never knew existed, I never had access to, and I learned that from him. He looks at the market in different dimensions. He understands the markets, and not only that, he understands technical analysis as well, and he explained to me in such simple terms how the markets work and how they move. So when I asked why is it that the DAX and the Euro move in opposite ways, the way he explained it to me is so simple and so easy to understand, and he's such a big role model for me.
What was one of the hardest things that you've had to overcome in trading?
Oh, that's even painful for me to say that and hard to admit. Losing a bunch of money for a friend that entrusted me to trade for them, and losing that friend consequently. On the flip side, that is why I changed my life, why I drew that out in the sand and became the trader that I am today, and also why I'm so determined to help traders to stop making brokers rich. It was a wake-up call for me.
How has your trading evolved over the years?
I started with studying pretty much every strategy that I could find under the sun, and it became more focused because I learned to understand myself so well that I now don't do what everyone else does or what I think has to be done. I only do what I know suits my personality, my thinking style, and I learn all the time something new. Every time I learn a new subject, and I have that in my performance improvement plan and is part of my milestones and action steps towards my $5 million goal.
What's the number one resource you spend your time on?
I talk a lot with phenomenal traders. I'm so lucky. I have access to them. I ask them questions all the time.
What's your favorite book about trading or the markets?
I'm an overachiever. I have two. More Money Than God, Sebastian Mallaby, amazing book. And High Performance Trading, Steve Ward. I love Steve Ward. He was a defining factor who helped me. He was my trading coach in 2011, and he helped me to really transform my life and my trading because he introduced me to loving performance statistics and metrics.
What's your favorite movie or TV show about trading or the markets?
$1 Million Trader, done by Lex Van Dam, and Steve Ward was the consulting coach, performance coach on that show. And I love it so much because I see myself in each and every of those traders. It's so bad, but really helpful when you see your behaviors in other people. And so many traders ask me if I have seen Billions. Not as yet, I have to admit, I just don't have the time. But I always say I live Billions rather than watching it. Working with hedge fund guys and working with phenomenal traders beats it by sitting on the couch and watching it.
What's the best piece of advice that you've received about trading or the markets?
Whoa. Once again, overachiever. Steve Ward. It's not your past that determines your future. It's what you do now that determines your future. It's all about minimizing distractions as much as possible. Linda Reschke, all about it's develop a structure, develop a routine, and find a team that complements your weaknesses. That's what she's done to support her weaknesses. Religiously minimize, if you have a great routine, she says you religiously minimize the scope for blonde moments. And one more, my favorite hedge fund friend, he taught me, he reframed me that keeping statistics is like having a Fitbit. You know, the Fitbit tells you how much you have moved, how you're going with your being healthy and fit, and this is what performance statistics do for you.
Now, if you can give a piece of advice to the new people interested in getting involved in trading, what would it be?
Find a way. And don't put other people on a pedestal. They don't have the magic. The magic that you see in them is something that you have within you. And every successful trader has a dark past, and every losing trader has a bright future.
If you weren't involved with trading in the markets, you'd be doing what?
No idea. I can't imagine. Maybe I would train horses. That's what I would do. I can't imagine my life without markets and without coaching.
Mandi, this was fantastic today. Where can people find you on Twitter, and give us a website?
Okay, so my website is tradingpsychology.com.au. And another one is called highperformancetrading.com.au, which is modeled on Steve's book. That's how much I love it and how much it changed my trading. And on Twitter, I am MPX_trader.
Everybody, you have to follow Mandi on Twitter. She's great, a lot of fun, very knowledgeable, and just great insight today. I don't know what else to say except this was such a fun, educational conversation with you, Mandi. Thank you so much for coming on Futures Radio Show.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel really blessed having the chance to finally meet you, Anthony.
Thank you for listening to Futures Radio Show. If you have any questions or comments for myself or my guests, please visit futuresradioshow.com and sign up to be a premium member for free. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes.